Progress.
You guys hear me on Zoom?
Yeah.
Getting nods. Cool. No, we can probably do that. Ugh.
Maybe we can go away, the filter might be a little bit loud.
We'll go to the other side.
Welcome, everybody who is on Zoom, that I can't see or in person. Professor Schmidt and I wanted to have a session to talk about honors, even though we did the same a couple of years ago, and that recording is online. So if you want to check out what was said back then, I think things haven't changed too much. But I guess just to reiterate, like in some ways it's fairly simple in a sense that if you have, so we have a GPA requirement. But then the main thing is to have a research idea that you want to be investing a considerable amount of time officially say by, end of junior year, beginning of senior year, is when you need to have unofficially, I would recommend the sooner the better to start thinking about your project, and especially if you want to be doing an ethnographic project that requires either human subjects permission, or if you're working with animals that have any IRB issues, you want to do it sooner than later because the IRB process can be painfully slow. And I think all of the students who have gone through the process can attest to that, and we'll say more about it. What do we want to see in a proposal? We want to see that you have an idea. Title helps because that gives us a clue into what you're up to, right? We want to see a set of questions. We want to have those questions motivated by some conversation with the literature, at least in a sociocultural and anthropology, health and medicine. We want you to have some idea of your methodology. So you're doing an ethnography, or you're doing library-based research, who would you want to follow or interview, which might be some of your inclusion, exclusion criteria. What's the time frame of it? How many people, how frequently, those kinds of questions. And then kind of, so what are some things that you'd be asking about, and wanting to find out about? What would you be analyzing, looking for? And then a time, basically, like map it out. And so that's why I say the sooner the better. So if you're already a sophomore and are thinking about it, now is a great time to be reading up as much as you can about the topic. And that can lead you into a question that's in conversation with a literature. And then if you're a junior, it's a great time to begin thinking, if you're doing an ethnographic-based thesis, great time to be thinking about IRB and begin to develop it. Consider applying for Europe for the summer, because that gives you extra time to do them more. I think Katrina can attest to starting that, submitting the IRB sooner than June, because it could go into mid-July, by which time after summer is gone. So if you can at all do it sooner than that, give yourself like at least, or give the IRB at least 6 weeks just to get back to you. And then they get back to you with more and more questions. The good news is that we've had a lot of students in recent years go through the IRB process. And I think everybody has been more than happy to share with others. And this is, that IRB application is one place where plagiarism is kind of encouraged. Not exactly like more work, but essentially there are certain things that they're looking for that you want to hit those main points, but then of course personalize it to your own project. Kind of thing. And then as far as writing, because we have more students, I think that getting together in groups, whether it's just to say on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going to be writing with you. That just gives you some peer support that's helpful. Or it can be even sharing drafts and sharing literature, because my assumption is that you're probably going to be picking somewhat similar topics with some overlaps. And it might be nice to share some resources. The other thing that I haven't mentioned is a faculty member. You want to ask a faculty member to be working with you, and that faculty should have some expertise in the topic that you're doing. And that's why you'd be asking them. And ideally, you already have a relationship with that faculty member because you've taken a class with them. Or if you haven't had a chance, but you think that they're really the ideal person, then have a series of conversations and get to know them to make sure that this is a good fit. And I think that it's up to you and the faculty to figure out how often you need to meet and what kind of feedback you need. Last year, for example, I was supervising 4 theses. Usually I like to meet with a student at least once every 2 weeks or once a week. Last year I was meeting with them, but I can't be meeting, like 4 extra hours a week. So I think that this group got less attention than I would have ideally liked to give. On the other hand, I had done some previous Europe with them, so hopefully they got a little bit more ahead of time. And that might be your situation too. You want to have a good, if you're doing a 2-semester thesis, and I highly recommend doing a 2-semester thesis, especially if it's an ethnography-based thesis, just because it takes so much time, not only to carry out the interviews or the ethnography, but then to also analyze all of that data and make sense of it and write it up. So it's a good idea to have completed the data collection, if at all possible, by the end of the fall term or even midway through the fall term, and then give yourself the time to write, with the idea that you can defend as late as kind of the last week of the finals. But you want to have, ideally, to have shown some drafts to your faculty advisor. And at some point during the year, earlier is better, I think, is to also have a conversation with at least one other faculty member who will be on your committee, meaning, if you've worked with them a lot and you actually want feedback from them, have those conversations. If you just want them to be at the defense because you value their opinion, that's okay too, and they might prefer that because less work. But essentially, you do want to give them at least 2 weeks to be, or however long they tell you that they need the minimum amount of time, to give them your completed thesis, so that on the day of the defense, everybody comes together. And the idea isn't to fail. The idea is that you give a short presentation kind of recapping what your thesis is about, what you did, what you know, kind of what your methodology was, what your questions were, what your findings were, conclusion, and then the faculty are gonna be asking you questions and ideally kind of pushing you to what you might, like how you might expand it, how you might improve it, how to push you further, whether it's so that you could consider submitting it to a journal for publication, or maybe you're heading towards grad school and want to develop this project further, or this project gives you an idea of the kind of research you want to do. And so the point of the defense isn't for you to be defending and be on the defensive, but instead a kind of culmination of taking you seriously as an academic and treating you kind of like a colleague. Which hopefully we're already doing in classes.
And which can include
Yeah.
difficult questions.
Yes, I mean, it's, if you get difficult questions, it means we respect you. If you get all softballs, it means we probably don't respect you as much. Or you're just so perfect and we have nothing to say. But that doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I have a question about paperwork. So for those who are interested in doing human subject stuff, would you recommend that they have IRB approval or have at least submitted their IRB application by the time they send in the proposal?
Yes, I highly recommend doing the IRB well before your senior year.
In consultation with your
In
faculty
consultation with
advisor.
your faculty advisor, absolutely. Also, you can't do it without the consultation of your faculty advisor. As an undergrad, you need our signature. And hopefully whoever is giving their signature is actually looking at what you wrote and telling you, you know, maybe you want to change that a little bit.
Yeah.
But we also don't get into the mind of the IRB bureaucrats who actually review your application. And the reality is that they have some turnover. They're not always coming from an anthropology background, and they sometimes need some educating and pushback. And that's where your faculty advisor can also help you and advise you with that.
Incidentally, for like biological anthropology, we don't have to deal with IRB generally, because we're not usually working with humans, living humans. But we may need other permissions, including maybe museum permissions or permission from the IACUC, which is the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. Usually, if you want to work with non-human primates, you would come in under the permit of me or Cheryl or whoever else you're working with. You don't have to do your own IACUC application, which is great because it's the same issues with IRB. But if you do a project completely independent, like if you're like, I want to go do a field school and then study capuchin monkeys, which none of us work on, that you might have to do it yourself, in which case your faculty advisor would also help you with that. So, but there was a questions, I thought I heard somebody start to say something.
I was just gonna say, before we get into like sharing, I did put some slides together, basically breaking down what Professor Cholet just said, so people can see it in writing if they need, but Professor Cholet did a great job too, so. Basically, again, just reiterating what she said, I'll speak loud for the Zoom over there. Eligibility, like you said, people with a strong academic record are encouraged. Otherwise, you have to go through DUS. Which is
So it happens to be me this year. It's not always gonna be me. And the reality is that, so a previous year, you know, we had Professor Schmidt, and there was somebody with a lower GPA than was, you know, kind of the cutoff. And essentially that's done. So he consulted with faculty who have had the student in their classes to figure out, you know, what was going on and make sure, can they do it? And as long as your faculty advisor vouches for you, I'm gonna listen to them. I like, who am I to judge what you can or can't?
And I'd also like to say, like, if your GPA is well below that, and you want to do research, but you don't want to do it for honors, you still can do research without doing honors. But if you're gonna do the research anyway and you qualify, why not get honors?
Yeah.
I've had some students before that did
Oh,
like
really?
amazing work and they're like, oh, I don't wanna do an honors thesis, and I was like, it's here.
Well, some students actually, they do research and then they don't wanna write it up, and so
Yes.
that's understandable, and that has happened. And another point that I today, so we'll get back to it.
Next is once you get accepted into the honors program, you have all these forms and contracts to follow. And you must maintain a GPA of 3.5.
So the idea is you don't goof off, like you still maintain your classes, right? That's the only thing about it.
If you have to petition because your GPA is under 3.5, when you're doing honors, do you have to get it up to the 3.5?
I don't think we're bureaucratic enough to.
Okay.
I think once you're in, you're in.
Okay.
But please don't,
Like,
let it. stay
Right,
like
don't let
that.
like your GPA.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't wanna be like, whoa.
Yeah.
like, what
Yeah,
happened?
yeah. Because it can be tempting to spend all of your time on your research and completely neglect your classes. And that's just not a good idea. And especially if you're doing research and a thesis because you think you want to go to grad school and then you have a C on your transcript, that's probably not
It's not
gonna
the
look
best.
good. So,
This is just a quick rundown of sociocultural anthropology honors. Like Professor Shillette put out the timeline for us, junior year, we're gonna take ethnography and anthropological theory 1 and 2. And like she said, identifying with a faculty member to advise you, senior year. Define your thesis, write up your thesis and defend it. Same thing with the next one, it's just bioanthro, pretty much the same process, just a different class. And then health and medicine, anthro health and medicine, they can choose between either sociocultural or biological with the advisement of their. Advisement.
yeah, and I just want to explain that it's a new track, and we haven't developed a required set of theoretical courses that we want to insist on, mainly because we think that some students in anthropology, health and medicine are going to skew more to bio, in which case strongly advise and even maybe require if you're working, and that's with your faculty advisor, to take the bio classes. If you're doing a more socioculturally skewed thesis, our discussions in the faculty meetings and my position has been, no, we should not mandate that students take the theory classes. In retrospect, I think it is a good idea to take theory classes. And I think some of the anthro health and medicine might say the same thing. And so again, have that discussion with your advisor and think about which theory classes would help you in framing the questions that you're constructing for your research. And 461, 462 tend to, I mean, we highly recommend that they be taken in sequence and in the same year. And part of it is because it does build a kind of cohort experience, which is nice for anthropology majors, and especially these days with the hub kind of separating you a lot of times from other anthropology students. So these are challenging classes that I think can also be a good experience for getting to know each other.
Now now these are recent projects.
These are just from last year, so you guys can kind of get an idea of what projects look like in a different specialization.
But we have a whole sheet of kind of going back 4 years, I think, maybe even
2018,
5,
yeah.
yeah, so cool, yeah.
Right now, we'll open it up to the student speakers. We have Emma in person, Charlotte, Becca, Bella, and Zoe on Zoom. And we're just gonna do like panel style first. The speakers will go around and maybe talk a bit about your research that you did for your thesis. And then we'll open it up to questions.
We also have C here in the
Yeah.
room. We did a biological anthropology.
Yeah, add it up, like.
lesson. Yeah.
Sure. So. I don't know, I haven't seen them. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Hello, everyone. I'm Emma. I recently graduated. I did a sociocultural honors thesis. The title of my thesis on the last slide was A Spectrum of Responsibility, Exploring Neurotypical Siblings, Care of Autistic Siblings. My thesis was very autoethnographic in nature. If anyone has any questions about that, I'm happy to answer. But Professor Shohet was my advisor. I selected Professor Shohet because I had taken a course with her. It was actually 461. I really enjoyed the class. And we have a connection because her research focuses a lot on care. So I know she mentioned that when you select your faculty advisor, you typically want to select someone who either you have a rapport with, having taken a class with them or something along those lines, or if you share a common research interest. I was lucky enough where I had both of those things. So that's a little bit about me and my research interests. So yeah, if I have sociocultural, autoethnographic questions, I'm happy to answer. I know I was speaking towards the camera, but that was also towards all of you.
Absolutely. So hi, my name is C. I am a 2021 alum, which is exciting to like come back for this. I do work at BU now, so I'm never far away and can always chat about my experience. But what I worked on was with Dr. Garrett in biological anthropology, and I did a thesis on lemur nasal cavity variation by forest type and species. And that began as a project in 2019 that I did maybe 2 species of, and I did landmarking and things like that on the morphological side or morphometric side, and then brought it back in 2020 and 2021 to do my full honors thesis. So it started out as just like, I want to see what's out there, and then it turned into I want to keep going and expand this from 2 species to 12, and see what I can do with, a lot more specimens. So that was pretty much how that went. I also did a minor in archaeology as well, and I worked with the core curriculum, so I feel very like interdisciplinary in the way I approach academics. But the cool thing about it is I was able to do some lab managing after I graduated in an archaeology lab, and then also work in a STEM focused program at MIT for STEAM education with like kids from like 5th grade all the way through to 12th. So lots of different ways to apply the stuff that I worked on in undergrad.
Uh-oh.
We love you.
Wait, I thought we allows us unlimited.
We did after, Julie was saying that we could use the meeting room, like
This was
yours.
my personal one.
That's weird.
So apparently
Mine
not.
wasn't. I don't know why mine works. I didn't know. I thought like everyone's
Interesting.
personal was like for them. You don't.
What's different about me?
No, I just thought that's.
Are you both the same year? Did you kill it at the same time?
You might want to
well,
create
I was gonna say, maybe send the link
Send it
in the chat,
Yeah.
Like,
A
like
new-
in the chat,
like
chat.
schedule a new
Yeah,
meeting for like,
schedule for right now.
Yeah.
Like,
I think if you go into the same link, you should be able to hop back in. You
Oh,
just have to go
really?
in the same
okay,
link.
yeah,
okay,
so
Okay.
just make sure everybody on
Yeah.
Zoom.
everyone here, join the same link when the link expires.
All right, Charlotte, if you're here, do you wanna go?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
No,
Sort of.
You can't hear me?
no,
You can.
very faintly.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Good, yes.
I heard myself. Um, there's a slight echo, maybe, I think. I don't know. Okay, maybe not. All right. So I'm Charlotte. I graduated in 2022. Um, I was sociocultural and health and medicine, and my thesis was called Dissonant Justice. It was about anti-abortion men who participated actively in like anti-abortion activism in the Boston area. Um, yeah, I went to Catholic school and I was part of BU Surf on campus. So it was kind of just like a culmination of like a lot of different things I'd studied in anthro and a lot of like my personal interests. So I did a lot of like ethnographic observation of the protests that happen outside of Boston Planned Parenthood on Com Ave. I'm not sure if they still happen. I'm sure they do. I don't know now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, but so I did some observing of those protests, and then I also did interviews with 8 men who are like local to the Boston area and consider themselves pro-life activists. So I wrote it all up in my thesis, and Professor Shohat was my advisor, primarily because I had taken a bunch of classes with her and a lot of her theoretical work, and her books really was a good fit for how I wanted to analyze my data. And yeah, I took about 2 years to do the whole thing. I think I finally figured out my topic by like the end of my junior year. And then my senior year, I basically executed the whole thing from start to finish with like IRB, field work, analysis, writing, defense, everything, which I don't recommend because it was a really crunched timeline and I did not sleep like the second semester of senior year. But I got it done and it was really great. And I would recommend highly doing it. It was definitely like a wonderful experience. And I'm still to this day really proud of myself for writing a 60-page thesis. And now I work in like private research and I research children and families and teens and tech and kind of like human tech interactions and tech effects on mental health and family structures, family dynamics. So it's not like directly related to my thesis, but I still like love having a thesis, highly recommend having a thesis, and I'm only 1 year post grad, so there's endless possibility for me to like return to it or build on it in the future. But yeah, that's me.
All right. I think Becca's next.
Yeah,
You're here.
yeah, I'm here. Hi, I'm Becca. I currently am a fourth-year doctoral candidate at Rutgers University in anthropology. I graduated in 2020, so my like remembrance of things may be a little bit fuzzy because grad school has like melted my brain. But I did my honors thesis with Dr. Eva Garrett. I started working with her in 2018. I was doing a lot of like phylogenetic modeling of the sense of smell, how the sense of smell evolved in primates. I like both, I guess, phylogenetic modeling and then also kind of trying to predict what the sense of smell might have been like in extinct primate species that we had morphological data for. So I did a little bit of museum work. I did a lot of coding. I also finished my honors thesis during COVID, like in 2020, right when the world shut down. So I feel like I was very much also just limping across the finish line. So I might not be as much help with like the finishing part because I was like, you know, very in my like COVID depressed era when I was finishing. But yeah, so I can answer questions about biological anthropology and like finding a research lab. But again, grad school has like melted my brain a little bit, so I might not remember everything.
I think I'm next. I also know that Zoe is not going to be here, so I can also speak a little bit about their thesis as well. So I'm Bella. My thesis was on ADHD in college students, and like how medication and medicalization in general kind of affects people's experiences of their identity, their decision making around medication, their process of accessing care in a university setting, things like that. So kind of in between Emma's thesis, kind of exploring ideas of neurodiversity, and then Zoe's thesis, which was a lot of also research on people accessing care and the process of moving through a medicalized system. So Zoe's thesis was on translivability in care, and so trans people deciding what kinds of care to access and how that interplayed with their own identities and their own sense of who they were. So that, I think, both of our theses, and my thesis in particular was a psychological anthropology thesis, which falls under the medical anthropology section. I think, speaking for myself, but also I think in general, anyone who's interested in the health, science, and medicine track, I took an intro to ethnography class, which is AN 103, but I didn't take 401 or 402. And I think it was difficult for me to not have that theoretical background in writing mine. And I think if I could go back, I would take, either 401 or 402, but I might also take some of the grad courses of the GMS program. And they also have some theory classes there that would be really helpful. And I really enjoyed all the classes I took through that program. So yeah, I can also, like Charlotte, I'd done Europe's before, but on different topics. And I didn't decide what my topic was going to be until like right then. And so I did everything all at once. And the IRB, like I didn't get it back until I think like December or something. So it took me a long time to actually get started. And then it was really crammed into my final semester, which again, I also would not recommend. But I do think, also as someone who graduated in May, it has been really, really helpful to, even if I'm not applying to grad school right now, like to talk about my thesis as like a major accomplishment, or, showing that I am able to organize my time and things like that, right? I think that's a really good thing to talk about in interviews and has helped me in the job process. And I also think one other thing that Emma didn't mention, but it was really cool. Emma, Zoe, and I got to present our work in the Society for Psychological Anthropology in the spring. And that was like the first academic conference I've been able to go to. And it was just really amazing to have that opportunity. And I wouldn't have had either like the work to present or like the funding to do it without having done an honors thesis. So I really recommend it. Oh, and last thing, I also had Dr. Charlotte, which was wonderful. And she's an amazing advisor. And yeah, happy to answer any questions. So yeah, we are gonna stop for right now. I'm gonna end the meeting, and then everyone just rejoin the same link, and we'll start the Q&A.